Good morning, students. In our earlier sessions, we have discussed survey research, ex post facto research, experimental research, and qualitative method, ethnographic studies. So, in this session, we are going to discuss case study method in research work. So in the field of social sciences, case study is important tool for a good research methodology. It can be applied on the single subject, a small or larger group, a class within a school within a city, or event. So we can choose anything like small group, large group, class within a school, a specific group, a group of people. So we can choose anything for or as any sample for our research work. Case study method involves in-depth study. That's why we have to choose it very carefully because it is in-depth study. Longitudinal examination of a single subject or event. And it may be descriptive or explanatory as well. A case study is not different to a survey method. But instead of collecting data about few factors from a large number of units, the researcher makes a depth and intensive study of a single subject or small or large group, study of group or class in a school or school in a city. So it is like that. It is limited in scope, but more exhaustive and more informative as compared to survey because it is administered on large number of people. Most of the time it is administered on a large number of people, but it is in-depth study of a single subject. So its scope is limited sometimes, but it is more exhaustive and more informative as compared to survey. It can be used in school atmosphere. For example, a teacher may use case study to identify the cause of failure or in mathematics or any other behavioral problem students or any problem related to health, related to social problem, psychological problem. So it can be studied on any level. Why students are not performing well, what is the reason they are not taking interest. So a teacher can conduct such type of study, or any person, any researcher can take up this type of study to know in depth, to know it in depth. What are the causes? What is the actual factor? What are the factors responsible for something happening? So something to be studied. It can be used in a school atmosphere. For example, a teacher may use case study to identify the cause of failure in mathematics of a group of 10 students in class 5th, 6th, 7th, any class, it is of your choice, of village primary school who continuously failed in some units. So the teacher will study these cases in detail. What are the reasons? What are the factors that students are not able to perform well in their examination? Why such lack of interest in studies? Are they weak in mathematics? Do they have some foundational weakness or any other? What are the factors that are responsible for their poor performance? So it is in-depth study. The teacher will study these cases in detail in order to arrive at the specific causes of the failure of these students and then take a decision about the remedial measures which may be taken to overcome the problem of failures. So, nature of case study. Today we will discuss nature of case study. Case study provides a systematic and scientific way of perceiving or examining events. Collect data, analyze information, and then prepare a report. As a result, the researcher may gain a sharpened understanding of why the intense instance happened as it did, and what might become important to look at more extensively in future research. Case studies lend themselves to both gathering and generating and testing hypotheses. So, in other words, case study should be defined as a research strategy, an empirical inquiry that investigates a phenomenon within its real life context. Case study research means single and multiple case studies, can include quantitative evidence, relies on multiple sources of evidence, and benefits from the prior development of theoretical propositions. Case studies based on any evidence of quantitative and qualitative research. Single subject research provides the statistical framework for making inferences from quantitative case study data. According to Lemneck, the case study is a research approach situated between concrete data taking techniques and methodological paradigms. So, it is a research approach which is situated between concrete data taking techniques and methodological paradigm. Generally, case study methods were used in the field of clinical psychology to examine the patient's previous history regarding their mental health status, to know about the patient's physical and mental health, and to make an accurate diagnosis. So, it is very important to know about the patient's past. If you are handling some case, definitely you need to know background. What are the underlying factors, what are the background factors that can impact a student or any subject. So we need to check his or her background, his parental involvement, or sometimes his socioeconomic status and family environment, school environment, peer group, relationship in families. So many factors can be responsible. So if it is about health, we need to see previous history of that problem. So, to make accurate diagnosis, it is very important to know about the patient's past and present health, whether there is some improvement or it has deteriorated. So, what are the problems? The case study approach is based on reality. Some of these studies have been conducted in school environment, which have mostly centered on behavioral problems of children. Observation, interviews, psychological tests, and inventories have been used for collecting relevant data about the case or cases. However, subjective bias is a constant threat to objective data gathering and analysis techniques. The researcher must be thoroughly familiar with the skills which are associated with the conduct of case studies. Case studies are also helpful, very useful in the field of education because it refers to the use of a descriptive research approach to obtain an in-depth analysis of a person. Person can be any student, any group, or anyone. The various techniques may be applied on the subject, such as personal interview. We will talk to them, we will know about, we will inquire. Observation, we will observe subjects, we will observe that group, how they are behaving, what they are doing, what are their likings, what are their dislikings, what are their preferences. So we will observe them. Psychometric tests, archival records. So we can use the case study methods in education to describe rare events and conditions as well. Generally, case study is a single case design, but it can be a multiple case design as well, where replication instead of sampling is the criterion for inclusion. Criteria for selection of case study. We cannot take up anything as because we are liking it or we want to study. There should be some criteria. So, what are the criteria for selection of our case study work? Let's discuss. For selection of cases for the case study, we often use information oriented sampling. Definitely, you need information to handle something. Our cases are based on only this information, which is mostly based on the extreme cases or typical cases. The average case is often not the richest in information. Definitely, if it is average, or even if you are studying about average performance, average students of a class, you will not get much information. So either it should be extreme or some low, something low. Average will not yield some useful data. So extreme or a typical case reveals more information because they activate more basic mechanism and more actors in the situation study. In addition, both understanding oriented and action oriented perspectives. It is often more important to clarify the deeper causes behind a given problem and its consequences than to describe the symptoms of the problem and how frequently they occur. Random samples emphasizing representativeness will seldom be able to produce this kind of insight. It is more appropriate to select a few cases for their validity. For criteria, three type of three types of information oriented cases may be distinguished. Critical cases, which needs immediate attention, which needs to be dealt with immediate concern. Extreme or deviant cases. Extreme. Paradigmatic cases. So, a researcher needs to decide whether to do single case or multiple case studies and choose to keep the case holistic or have embedded subcases. Types of case study. There are four types of case studies. First is illustrative case study, exploratory case studies, cumulative case studies, and critical instance case studies. Once again, illustrative case studies, exploratory case studies, cumulative case studies, and critical instance case studies. So, illustrative case studies. These are primarily descriptive studies. They typically utilize one or two instances of an event to show what a situation is like. Illustrative case studies serve primarily to make the unfamiliar familiar and to give reader a common language about the topic in question. Exploratory case studies. This type of case study is performed before implementing a large scale investigation, like pilot studies. It is like pilot studies. So, this type of case studies are performed before implementing a large scale investigation. Their basic function is to help identify questions and select types of measurement prior to the main investigation. The primary drawback of this type of study is that initial findings may seem convincing to be released prematurely as conclusions. Cumulative case studies. These serve to aggregate information from several sites collected at different times. The idea behind these studies is the collection of past studies will allow for greater generalization without additional cost or time being expended on a few possibly repetitive studies. And last is critical case studies. These extreme one or more sites for either the purpose of examining a situation of unique interest with little to no interest in generalizability, or to call into question or challenge a highly generalized or universal assertion. This method is useful for answering causes and effect questions. I hope it is clear. In our next session, we will discuss steps for case study.